Welcome to LFC Transfer Hub. Liverpool cannot afford January transfer misstep with Arne Slot set to repeat Jurgen Klopp error. The news that Liverpool does not plan to make significant additions to its squad in January, despite the growing injury list, will have come as little surprise to supporters. After all, when the Reds made 8 first-team additions last summer and spent the guts of £450 million, $608 million, on new recruits, there was no expectation that Arne Slot would be left short in terms of quality and options this season. In fact, after landing Alexander Isak on deadline day, most felt a side that had begun the campaign with a 100% winning streak was possibly on course to wrap up another Premier League title at a canter. Yet, those plans have unraveled. Performances and results dropped. Arne Slot's position came under increasing scrutiny, and it quickly became apparent that a squad initially seen as revitalized and strengthened was actually lacking in key areas. Injuries haven't helped, of course. None could have foreseen Giovanni Leone's season-ending injury on his debut, or that by mid-January Connor Bradley's knee problem would reduce Slot's defensive options for the rest of the campaign to just 6. Isak's fractured leg has only compounded matters. Now Liverpool looks light at both ends of the pit. It led most to the conclusion that reinforcements are undeniably required in January, especially with Liverpool still competing on 3 fronts. Yet, Liverpool.com has been informed that, as first reported in The Athletic, the expectation remains that no signings will be completed this month, even after Bradley's campaign curtailing knee twist last week. That's not to say definitively that no first-team arrivals will materialize. Liverpool remains vigilant in the window and open to market opportunities, but there is certainly no sense that defensive reinforcements are now viewed as essential. In the short term, that raises questions about who exactly will replace the injured Bradley. Jeremy Frimpong appears the obvious choice, something Slot implied after the win over Barnsley, a match that highlighted the 25-year-old's offensive qualities and often suspect defending. Joe Gomez and Dominic Szoboszlai can also expect stints in that position, while Curtis Jones and Wataru Endo have previously been deployed at right back. The issue, of course, is that with diminished squad depth, it could leave Liverpool light elsewhere. Another intriguing figure is Calvin Ramsey, the defender who is yet to make a Premier League appearance in 4 years at Liverpool and yet has slowly evolved into a first-team necessity throughout the course of the campaign. He impressed in his one appearance this season, which came in the Carabao Cup loss against Crystal Palace, but has not been trusted since and has been an unused substitute in the last 7 matches. The integration of a fringe member of the squad will no doubt evoke memories of the Reds' last Premier League title defense, when a spate of defensive injuries meant Jurgen Klopp was forced to call upon Nat Phillips and Reece Williams, while turning to an eclectic assembly of underqualified replacements in the market. That approach in 2021 led to the usual criticism of FSG's perceived frugality. It looked for cheap, short-term solutions, deferring any significant transfer action until the following summer. The same can be said half a decade on, although any allegations of thriftiness cannot be leveled at owners who invested so heavily in the squad. Assuming Liverpool does not act this window, it will offer the first proof that the summer of 2025 was an exception rather than the norm. In some ways, that has already been seen with the decision not to push for Antoine Semenyo's transfer, even though he was highly admired by the Anfield hierarchy. So too is Marc Guéhi, another being sized up by Manchester City. Should Pep Guardiola's side snatch both from under Liverpool's nose, then supporters can be forgiven for feeling a sense of déjà vu. As the Klopp era ended, there was a widespread belief among fans that Liverpool would struggle to compete with City's financial might. That, of course, changed in the subsequent 12 months, even if the Reds' exorbitant summer spending spree was partly funded by a raft of expensive outgoings. Just a few months on, the perception of that window has dramatically altered. History also offers a sober warning for Liverpool. The club's rigid transfer plans after winning the title in 2020 meant it was unable to overcome the adversity the following season provided, and some would argue that it allowed City to regain supremacy. It went on to win 4 successive titles. That is unlikely to be the case this time. For a start, Arsenal has big ambitions of its own, and Guardiola's time in England is surely drawing to a close. However, a failure to make at least one defensive addition in January could leave Slot in Liverpool. It actually has been ringing, though not from Madrid, he said. But yes, there were definitely a few people who felt they had to contact me directly about it. First of all, I think it's another sign that something isn't quite right there at the moment. If Xabi Alonso, who over the last 2 years in Leverkusen has shown what an outstanding coaching talent he is, and I think at his age and with the number of jobs he's had, you can say that, is then forced to leave Madrid just 6 months later, it shows a few things. On the one hand, it shows that nowadays there is no time anymore. On the other, the expectations at Real Madrid are obviously enormous. To make a decision like that in the heat of the moment, after losing a Spanish Super Cup final to Barcelona yesterday, says a lot. Those comments suggest Klopp holds reservations about how things are managed in the Spanish capital. Former Liverpool defender Alvaro Arbeloa has taken over as Real's interim boss after Alonso's exit, just 7 months into his spell. By comparison, Liverpool thrived under Klopp due to the significant patience afforded to him throughout his time at the club. While the pressure to challenge for Europe's biggest honors may not be quite as relentless at Anfield as it is in Madrid, the environment there still seems to be one where Klopp would feel comfortable. This is entirely understandable when you take into account the substantial support and trust Klopp received during his tenures at Dortmund and Mainz. He exceeded expectations in both roles, so it stands to reason that a club operating under intense pressure might not be the best fit for him. Nevertheless, the Anfield icon appears content in his current position as Red Bull's head of global soccer, a role he is occupying. If Real is on the hunt for a high-profile appointment to step into Alonso's boots, it seems Klopp will continue to be out of the club's grasp.